what are we standing up for? The ability, the freedom to do what's right as God defines that right.
God's the ultimate author of liberty.
We don't want government to stand between us and our freedom to do what is right.
Hello and welcome back to the Bible Nation podcast. I'm Doug Levesque, and joining us today again is Pastor Jason Georges of Emmanuel Baptist Church in Corunna, Michigan. Remember, the best culture is a Bible culture. It's proven and it works. We're here to talk about how the Bible affects culture. And we think that the Bible affecting culture makes for the best society. It is proven. It does work. And so you can see all of our podcasts, many articles about these and other topics at BibleNation.org. Today we're going to continue with a discussion that we started in our last podcast session on strange change in the Middle East. Since the war, February 24th, Russian invasion of Ukraine, everyone's been focused on NATO. Everyone's been focused on issues coming out of that, the price of gas, etc. We've discussed the war, we've discussed the economic impacts, but one thing that not a lot of people are really talking about is how overnight, 1 month, things that were barely a whisper about the Middle East have come to fruition in a big way. In other words, the world's changed. It's being turned upside down, and in the middle is these two wrestling pups, the Arabs and the Jews. And the Middle East has come to a prominence in just a month that we ought to note, and that we have to say, what's the application? How then do we live in regards to this? And so last time we said that since the Russian invasion, there's been a couple of things that have happened. A new military alliance. We started with the Abraham Accords, which was more or less an economic alliance, but that's turned into meetings in the Negev Desert where Morocco and Bahrain and the UAE and Egypt and Israel and the United States have come together and said, we're going to have our own NATO of the Middle East, if you will. And where that was just a whisper, it's now become de facto. It's become celebrated. And so this new military alliance is unprecedented, it's overnight, and it's strange. Secondly, we talked about that there's a new route for oil, this oil pipeline that comes from the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba, across an isthmus in Israel into the Mediterranean, that's been basically had a trickle effect in its building, its usage. It is now a primary pipeline in the world for 80% of the world's oil that's coming west. And all of a sudden that makes Israel twice as important, twice as powerful, have twice the leverage. And I think maybe by Russia and Ukraine not wanting this to happen, to have their own gas deal, to have their own pipeline into Europe, serving European oil needs, by not wanting that to happen, and by war taking place, all of a sudden Israel's the one that might be able to relieve gas prices. And so this has just happened overnight. And then thirdly, we talked about the new role as peacemaker. Prime Minister of Israel, Bennett, was the first world leader to go to Moscow and to talk to Putin about peace. And, there's self-interested reasons for that. That was followed by Erdogan in Turkey, and of course the peace talks are being held in Turkey. But it's unprecedented that would be the case. And so overnight, the Middle East has come to a huge prominence. A lot of global verbiage is coming out of that place, making it central. China is looking there. India, as Pastor Georges talked about last time, is looking there. Of course, the United States is looking there as well. Well, that was just half of the topic. So we thought we would continue, Pastor Georges, we would continue. And I would just start off that now there's a new way of doing war. And so obviously we have technological advancements, but I'm not just talking about technological advancements. I'm talking about a Rubicon. We've crossed a Rubicon in warfare, and really it's Israel started it. Turkey continued it with some of Israel's technology that they had previously traded, and then Turkey sold that technology to Ukraine, and Ukraine has had limited success against Russia, who supposedly is a much bigger army and technologically advanced. And that is the new way of doing war is massive drone usage, suicide drones, and not just with a human at the other end, but with artificial intelligence at the other end. In other words, artificial intelligence, a computer program, if you will, is being allowed to pick a target and then execute death upon that target.
An algorithm.
An algorithm, which, of course, could, with the swipe of a keyboard, be turned into innocents, Christians, Americans. Here's an article by Times of Israel. Israel decimated Iranian drone fleet in February airstrike inside Iran. Now, this preceded the Russian invasion. Okay, and so very little was said about this, but Iran had a huge drone fleet, and I'm not sure this article has the exact number, but we're talking hundreds of drones that had attacked Israel inside of Iraq, that had attacked other Israeli targets, and Iran sent over scores of drones and destroyed the Iranian drone fleet. I mean, this is a huge victory for Israel because millions of dollars and everything, and they absolutely decimated, just destroyed the Iranian drone fleet, and this happens right before Russia attacks. So, in other words, that's got to be one of the factors of what's going on there. And so, not only do we have this futuristic drone wars, I mean, it sounds like Star Wars, drone wars, Clone Wars, etc., but very effectual. The Ukrainians have had wonderful fortune.
Game-changing force multiplier.
Yes.
These drones.
Using Turkish drones.
Right.
The Turks at one point were trying under Netanyahu to have peace with Israel and to be allies against Syria and against Russia, and they shared military technology. And so the vaunted Turkish drone technology really is Israeli drone technology once removed. And they sold these drones to Ukraine. And so Ukraine, this is the weapon of choice because it's a medium-sized drone and it's able to gather intelligence, direct forces, pick targets, and
destroy them.
And destroy them.
So a new term has been entered. I just heard this last week into the English lexicon, the kamikaze drone.
Yeah.
So the U.S. has given them 1,000 or so, hundreds of these slingshot drones. They look like black tubes.
Right.
They're in a backpack, and you carry them around. One person can carry it. It is launched. The wings come out, and it is designed. It can stay over target. So the generals gush over this. They've actually been on TV. You've been listening to the general pundits now, which that's a new phenomenon as well. It's been remarkable. I know I don't want to get off point, but the number of generals who have now become commentators.
Yes.
We have every broadcast, and that's not what we do in the past. Generals kind of did their work and stated, but now they're public figures, political figures. Okay. But they're gushing over this slingshot technology, and what the value of it is, we've never been able to have a munition that can stay on target. It can pause. Yeah. It can come over target. Yeah. And it can identify it's a target, and then you don't have to worry about saving it. It's disposable.
And it not just to blow up a huge area, but to target an individual, because these things get overhead, and now they can listen to radios, cell phones. They have facial recognition,
right?
And so even if a Russian general, this has happened. This is why Russia's lost like 8 generals or colonels, huge commanders, because they put aside the radio because like the radio's killing them, and they pick up a cell phone from a Ukrainian that they stole or killed,
right?
But their voice recognition is on that, or their face recognition, because we all say our phones are listening to us and watching us and probably taking pictures of us as well. And that's happening. And so the drone that's already overhead is just kind of getting positive kill.
Right.
It's been programmed to do so. And so the drone technology coupled with the communications interceptions and what you said, the algorithm of an AI that says kill shot, is decimating leaders, and that's freezing them. That's freezing the other leaders, creating a new fear. There's not a whole lot of ways to combat that when you're out there at the time.
Well, and what we haven't seen yet, at least we haven't seen recorded, is so we're seeing these one-offs. But if you've been to any kind of show lately or even fireworks shows, they're using now mass drones and synchronized, flying in formation, one computer is controlling 100 drones, and they can put images in the sky with the drones. You say at the Olympics.
Yeah.
Okay. That's weapon technology.
Yes.
I mean, so imagine a swarm of drones over a population, over a convoy, and simultaneously could attack.
Right.
And massive destruction.
Yes.
And so the power that is unleashed, and I think, the danger here, or the moral thing is now we've taken the human out of killing.
Yes.
And so even it's an algorithm making a decision. It's no longer a moral. It's always moral, but it's no longer now it's no longer a moral agent making a moral decision.
Right.
And a computer programmer, as he's programming the algorithm, is not making. He's not living with the gravity of his moral decisions.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, a soldier with a rifle, with another human being in his sights, and he's about to take that life, requires, a justification for war in that own person's heart and mind. Otherwise, he's a murderer.
Right.
So he, now you could be on the wrong side of history and be wrong, but you have to go through that process in your mind. And AI, and of course, the AI that they're doing now is learning AI.
Yeah.
So the computer, the programmer is disconnected from the programmer. Yeah. So now the computer can make decisions outside of human.
So hopefully there's a kill switch where somebody can control that and stop it.
Well, that was the whole Terminator movies.
Yeah, and hence my point. We're there. We've crossed the Rubicon. We've gone past a point of no return.
Skynet exists.
And so the Russian stalled trucks weren't just because a munition blew something up or even a suicide drone blew it up, but because they could monitor what was going on, and so they had to shut down their communications, which froze them in place.
Right.
The other thing is we have electromagnetic pulse technology to where these drones can, target a communication truck and shut it down, and it's not really the weapons truck, it's the communications truck that all the other vehicles are moving on, and so if it can't move, nobody else can move. And so, that sounds cool. It sounds technological. It sounds bloodless, but it has the potential to be really, really dangerous. Even if a guy flying a bomber decides, there's too many variables, there's civilians down there, safe. I'm not going to drop these bombs.
Right.
And of course, we've had situations where men did that, but I'm not going to drop these bombs. Whereas AI would call it a success.
Right.
And we're at that point where we don't just have nation scrambling itself against nation and throwing, the lily white innocence of youth into and destroying a generation of youth, et cetera, et cetera. We're getting, we don't even need a nuke. We have technological advancement that can destroy society and take us back to the Stone Age and kill innocence as someone defines innocent as evil.
And listen, and not to get too Hollywood here, but Matthew Broderick predicted in that. Remember that old 1980s movie War Games?
Yeah.
I mean, and the computers were already playing World War, geopolitical, thermonuclear war, and the computer had already surmised, had already come to the conclusion that its definition of victory required the demise of the United States.
Yeah,
and had already come to that conclusion. Well, the other thing with this technology, and this is a little bit off topic, but it's already entering policing here in the United States. And so the use of drones, we, with the things that we're involved with, are sometimes at events, and we have our own drones there to take aerial photography. And so we become sensitive, and we'll look up, like, there's a drone up there. Whose is that?
Yeah.
And we've been in consultation with the local sheriff department, and they're scrambling because they don't know whose it is, or sometimes it's theirs. And it's a whole nother,
a lot
wave.
Of it's cool and fun and benign and entertainment value and da-da-da-da. But we're seeing now that this is a new way of doing war, which is dangerous. And so, we like to say, well, I'm glad the Israelis are on our side. But the Israelis are on everybody's side. The Israelis are providing security and weaponry to everybody, like I said, like to Turkey. And so that goes into Ukraine. And where all of a sudden they're not taking Biden's calls. And they're letting us in at the table, but we're not the driver of the new NATO in the Middle East. And so that puts us on the outs. Maybe we're in the target of the new drone AI.
The leader of the free world is becoming a diminishing term.
Yes. Well, it's, it used to be the president of the United States.
That's what I'm saying. The leader of the free world.
Now Zelensky's kind of setting himself up that way, or calling for a new one. And so all of a sudden you have new rounds of New World Order. New rounds of calls for the New World Order. Here's the New York Times. Iran's attack on Israel, secret Israeli base, it was a response to the secret Israeli attack on its drone bases. So the news came out, American news came out and said, oh, there's, the Iranians launched missiles at Americans in northern Iraq. That was the initial news. That was wrong. It wasn't Americans. It was Israelis. Why was that misconstrued or come out that way? Because it's media warfare. It's a new way of doing war. The reality is it was drones going back and forth. It wasn't missiles. So they're giving misinformation because they're trying to hide this new war. They're trying to hide the media war. They're trying to hide the drone war. They're trying to hide the technological and AI war. But that's exactly what's going on. And of course, all of this preceded what was going on. So Russia invading Israel was not the first step. Russia invading Ukraine was not the first step to what's going on. The first step was in the Middle East, and somehow Russia and Ukraine was manipulated in a response to that. The Middle East is involved there through its technology and its peace efforts, and at the same time is having peace talks and new military alliances. And so that's why I say strange change in the Middle East, because the change is not just Russia, NATO, Europe, Ukraine. The change is that everything is Middle East centric. That's what happened in just like 30 days. All of a sudden, it's like emerged,
right,
like into that capacity.
And that Israel is the innovator of these technologies. I mean, even Ukraine wanted Israel Iron Dome.
Yes.
So they are. So now they're the gatekeepers. Last time we talked about oil, but now they're the they're another Hollywood reference. They're the proverbial Tony Stark of the military industrial complex of here's the technology and they'll sell to. I mean, a weapons manufacturer will sell to who they want to the highest bidder,
and they have.
Right.
The news coming out last night was that since Israel has lost its conservative majority because their whip resigned, that's going to put the liberals in control, and all of a sudden China is who Israel's looking to for trade. China has told all the Middle East, we'll give you anything in our military arsenals for fuel, for fossil fuels. And so all of a sudden America has become secondary and China has become large because of, and I hate to say this, not just Biden's incompetence, but because of the danger that the leftist and woke views are to everyone else. Right. Everyone, I mean, China and Russia, they might fund these woke views, but they know, I mean, Communist Manifesto, that's just stupid. And that's just going to destroy the greatness of America. So they don't put up with it. They don't put up with wokeness. They just fund it.
America's demise right now, or diminishing, is self-inflicted.
Oh, absolutely.
We are dissolving from the inside.
Yes.
And so, why? Because we've been convinced that that the world is better if America is not excellent.
Right.
And yet, the safety of the world, if you're going to trust the safety, America's not perfect.
Right.
But American exceptionalism and that concept and that belief has preserved freedom.
Yeah.
Has preserved the freedom.
And so, the idea from everybody, even in America, was that Trump had his finger over the button and was crazy and was a Nazi and he was ready to push it on everybody.
Right.
And so he stepped over the line in North Korea and looked Kim Jong-un in the face. And, if he was still president, Russia would have never done this. Yeah, maybe that's true. I mean, remember the Saudis received Donald Trump like he was God Almighty when he got into office. It was the greatest reception of any world leader ever.
Another Trump Tower.
Because and then Israel was grateful for the things that Trump did. And so it was too strong. And so, the Democrats burned down the House. They burned down the election process. They burned cities. They burned the whole House down in order to get Trump out and take power. But all they could put there was Biden and Harris. They probably wanted to put someone else, but it only worked out that so now they've got to build the House back. And I think probably guys like Putin have said, now's our best opportunity to do this. And so,
totally off topic though, but the President Obama was just with President Biden and they were in the same room. And when they're in the same room, Biden is a big nothing burger in Obama's president. Even Harris was gushing over, and they had that little gaffe about Mr. Vice President, and then come to find out it wasn't a gaffe. It was, I mean, so there. Unfortunately, right now in America, there's a lot of nothing at best. Yeah, there's a lot of nothing leading.
This is what we talk about a lot: is that you can have someone in a position of authority that isn't the leader.
Right.
And that's what you've got. You've got Biden is in a position of authority, but he's not the leader. And if Obama is, and I don't think Obama is, but Obama was the one that leaned over in an interview with Putin and said, in my second term, I'll be able to have more leverage to do what we want to do. It was like, well, who are you taking orders from Putin? Are you guys in bed together? What's going on there?
Right.
And so Putin's been involved the whole time, but now is the time at American weakness for him to make his move. And I think Israel and these Arab nations also know that. Mm-hmm. And so the elephant in the room is that America's over here drowning.
Right.
And now we've got to create this new thing. So let's move on from a new way of doing war to a new challenge to national sovereignty. Again, we go back to February 22nd in the news, and here's the cry. Russia, quote, doesn't recognize Israel's sovereignty over Golan Heights. And so basically, right before troops roll over the border, this is their big statement. Mm-hmm. In other words, this is America on our border. We're fighting America on our border, and we're extending our border to the Golan Heights. And Israel recognizes that. And so overnight and inside of a month, Israel's national sovereignty that, of course, Trump recognized is being challenged. Here's another article from Jerusalem Post. Russia takes issue with Israel's sovereignty over Golan Heights and Jerusalem. Russia doesn't recognize Israel's sovereignty over Golan Heights that are part of Syria, Russian deputy ambassador says. So this is not just an idea to push America back or to invade and take parts of Ukraine. This is an initiative from the get-go to destroy the narrative on Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights and Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. And Russia has declared war over it. This is World War III.
Yes.
This is World War III. And Russia has stated these intentions, albeit benignly, but they're there. And the mainstream media isn't really making this any sort of effort. But all these small issues, a new military alliance, a new route for oil, a new role as peacemaker, a new way of doing war, and a new challenge to national sovereignty really is spelling the picture at what else is going on here. What else is going on here?
And when you say that, what it invokes is the history. You say this is World War III.
Right.
And of course, World War is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Sure.
Okay, so Hitler was playing World War II before the rest of the world realized we're playing World War II here. I mean, so he invades Poland. He comes and there's appeasement. There's think we're going to hold them up. There's containment, and yet they thought if we could just hold them back. And yet, if your adversary,
there's Time magazine saying Hitler's Man of the Year, 1939.
Yeah, like so. Sooner or later we got to start playing the same game here.
Yes,
we got to start getting on this.
And I don't mean to. We've always challenged leadership, whether it was on left or right, because from a biblical perspective. But man, Biden seems like a child in a toy store.
Right. And
it's not that like with Trump, he might push the button. With Biden, there's no way he'll push any button.
Right.
He's not going to be the one that does it. He's going to.
I was listening to one Russian analyst who was saying, that. And we're afraid to take this calculated risk, and this is a U.S. foreign policy right now with Russia, is we don't want to be provocative. Right. We don't want, but we're basing that on the idea that they're playing by the same rules we are, the same ethic we are.
Right.
And this analyst was saying that basically Putin, when you say I am not going to bring in, we are not going to have air superiority. Then what Putin hears is an invitation to have air superiority.
Right.
Like he will go to the open spot.
Yeah.
And so this analyst was saying what you have to say is no air superiority. What are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
But no one wants to take that calculated risk because because of the nuclear deterrent.
Yeah.
Because what happens if you're wrong?
Right.
What happens if he calls your bluff on it?
Yeah. Zelensky has given up on NATO. Europe and the United States and NATO have offered Ukraine on the altar of, well, we hope it doesn't go any farther than that. Mm-hmm. We hope it stops at the Dnieper and that there's some part of Ukraine that's still left. I mean, that's pretty much well established. Mm-hmm. And that's given India and China and others, well, we can play the middle. And the Middle East is saying, well, it's not strong enough on the West. We got to now play the middle. And so overnight, that's
well, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, unfortunately or whatever, the uselessness of the UN is being seen in this whole thing because the UN by charter was supposed to prevent this from happening.
Yeah.
And of course, have Russia with veto power on the Human Rights Commission.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Putin does know if we launch nukes, we got to deal with someone else launching nukes.
Oh, yeah.
But Zelensky is almost in more of a position that if I get a nuke, I'm going to use it.
Sure.
So, it's just a dangerous situation altogether. And I think this new alliance and these new changes in the Middle East, they're much more aware of what's going on than we are. They're playing the game better than we are at this point. We're still over here on the outs. We've been played to where the initiative, we don't have the initiative. We're in response mode.
Right.
And it's our own fault for sure. It's our own judgment or God's judgment upon us. Well, the last thing I have here is new challenge to national sovereignty and then therefore a new world order summit. Russia and China are coming out saying we need a new world order and they want it to be Russia-China based. India's using the term. These Middle East Asian meetings in the UAE are using the term. We're using the term. Biden's using the term. Europe's using the term. But they all have this a little bit different idea. But the one thing that's tying all those different ideas together is this Klaus Schwab idea of let's make it a central corporation. Let's function like a central corporation that creates new rules for these new orders. TheNationalNews.com. Can the Middle East be the center of the post-pandemic world? The Arab world can once again be the place for new ideas and talents as we seek solutions for an uncertain future. And of course, all the guy does is he's quoting Klaus Schwab from the meeting that just took place in the UAE, where they're all saying New World Order and peace. Klaus Schwab is the giant in the room, and he's the one that's kind of.
And when you bring COVID in, now you're talking Great Reset.
And you're talking Great Reset. Here's another article. This one is from the AtlanticCouncil.org. Dispatch from Dubai. The world isn't ready for this new world order. In other words, we're defining the new world order. The world's not ready for it. There's something yet that has to happen. COVID has brought us close. The Ukraine Russian-Ukraine invasion has brought us close. But there's something else. There's something else that's going to tilt us. In other words, we're the Leaning Tower of Pisa. One more hit, we're going to fall over. So again, like we said at the beginning, we're not saying this is the end. I'm saying I think this is the beginning of the end. Not that I rejoice in that, because I don't want to participate in one world government, central authority, non-American sovereignty, or a new currency, digital currency or whatever, that takes power out of the American people's hands for their own destiny, and ultimately is going to take religious liberty away.
Sure.
And that's the kind of thing that the Bible does paint the picture of the evil
that's coming
in latter days. And so it's not coming, it's here. And that's what they're saying. This new world order, here it is. We all agree on it, but the world's not ready for it. So we have to push the world some more. And so the Middle East gets it. They seem to be at the leverage point. They seem to have the reins more than Europe, maybe even more than China. China's courting the Middle East. And so this is the new dynamic world order. And they're saying the world's not ready to bow to Jerusalem and Dubai. That's what they're saying. And they're right. So what else has to happen? We've always said probably the U.S. has to be out of the way entirely, because Europe can be manipulated. Eurasia could be manipulated. Africa and South America probably are not,
but
apace.
American dominance and American influence is waning. So those things are happening.
We're getting there. Right. And of course, this is what we would tell, Christians who wonder if there really is going to be a rapture or not, that if there's a rapture, that's definitely going to affect America as much as, probably more than any other nation.
You would like to believe that.
We would like to believe that, and that then the power base is gone. Definitely a tax base is gone.
Right.
Definitely the salt and moral base is going to be gone.
The moral base is what's...
And so, so out of this, this new flower that's bloomed in the desert between Arab and Jew. By the way, we talked about the fact that they're talking about not just the Arab Summit or Arab Brotherhood, whatever, they're talking religious put together as well. That somehow we got to come together, all do what we're going to do in the name of Abraham, and so a religious unity is there as well. And I don't even have that on the list.
Well, and we talked about that last time we were together. This whole Ukraine thing is preceded by this split between the Russian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Orthodox. That there is a holy underpinning to this. There's a religious underpinning to this, and that's very potent and that's very powerful. And of course, the secularists would say if we could have one world religion, we would end wars, because religion supposedly has been the at the foot of every war.
The Vatican has said, let's have Jerusalem be an international city. The Vatican will govern it. So the Vatican said that. Well, Russian Orthodoxy is very prevalent in Jerusalem and in Israel. The St. Catherine's Monastery, where the Vaticanus, was found. That was a Russian Orthodox monastery. Russian Orthodox monasteries in Jerusalem are in very prominent positions as well. Orthodoxy plays a big role. And so, Putin would, in a sense, say, I'm the arbitrator. I'm the lion that's going to protect that. Just as the Church of England says that, the king is the protector, or the queen is the protector of the church. So there's a lot of dynamics in play in Russia and Ukraine and Europe and the United States in the Vatican. But one that we didn't see, the card up the sleeve that we didn't see, that just gave 4 aces on the table, is that the Middle East has just bloomed to a position that is not going to diminish again.
Right.
We're not going to see it. We're not going to accept it. This is, anti-Semitism isn't just anti-Jewishness. Shem is where Arabs came from, is where Jews came from. And so anti-Semitism is this idea of we don't want the Middle East. And so, now Israel and the Arabs aren't friends. They're not, but they're both using this as leverage with each other, as they did in Rome, as they did with Persia, as they did with Babylon.
But riches make friends.
Yeah, but I'm saying is this has been played out through all the world empires, and it's being played out again in the 10 toes, of Daniel's vision. And the 10 toes here are probably going to be these regions that all say we want the New World Order in our own flavor, in our own union. And so,
or that subdivision, or
the United States has to come down off its lofty perch to become just one of those toes. So, is prophecy being fulfilled? Absolutely, but we've always kind of known this and known that some direction of this was going to happen. But what's strange is that this change has happened overnight.
Yeah.
And only God can do that. Yeah. That's not a bald-headed guy in a room with a white cat, in a wheelchair, who is, the antithesis of James Bond. And he's we all think that there's this human collusion and conspiracy theory that's making all this happen. No, this is from the devil himself. It's a devilish collusion, and he doesn't put off all these airs and all these blooms saying evil, evil, evil. He puts them off all saying good, good, good. Men shall do what's right in their own minds. Right. And he's appealing to that, using the division, but then calling it unity and peace. Right. And the fact that it's coming to bloom in the Middle East, that Klaus Schwab is there, that everybody's hailing him. I'm just saying we ought to now be testing the winds, listening, watching, and saying what's coming out of the Middle East.
Right. And watch as we get ready to wrap this up.
Yeah.
The trembling cup of Jerusalem.
Yes.
I mean, so here is this, imagine what the Bible, Zechariah says, behold, the Lord says, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And so imagine the goblet, it's on the table in Jerusalem, and the world trembles and it shakes. And so that's what the Bible is telling us there. Watch that goblet. Watch the trembling of that goblet.
Yes.
And so Jerusalem is a cup of trembling, and it's always in the middle. It's the epicenter.
So it's always been that, but it's doubling down and doubling down. By being a nation, it's doubling down. By being the center of oil, by being the center of so-called peace talks, by being the center of so-called reset, brain drain, right. New World Order. We're gonna be the ones that perpetuate and handle this sort of peace. You're right. It is sucking in the whole world whether they want to or not. Americans are they don't really pay attention to what's going on. They just know, yeah, that Putin's bad because he went, and Zelensky's a hero because all they know is the Hollywood elements of it. Mm-hmm. And of course, those guys both play the Hollywood elements mm-hmm. of it. But Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, and then that leads the news for 3 days in the midst of what's going on. And so everybody has an opinion, and everybody's talking about that. And that is a thing, but it's nothing in comparison to the shifts. And so It's like a big magic trick. Look over here at what's going on. And so people need to look at what's going on and not just listen or understand it from some media outlet, right? Even us. They need to grab hold of their Bible and begin to understand what God says is the world stage and how the world stage will be. And as much as I've done that, as much as I'm looking, I find this absolutely amazing. Like this has happened in a way that I didn't even see,
Ukraine wasn't on our lips.
Ukraine wasn't on our lips. And certainly as we're watching Russia and Ukraine, it's a Will Smith slap to Chris Rock.
Right.
In comparison to the strange changes that just overnight happened in the Middle East, making Jerusalem the epicenter, like you said.
Right. Which is amazing to think about because, the definition of a globe, which mm-hmm. is what the earth is, mm-hmm. excuse all the flat earthers there that might be listening. Yeah. The definition of a globe, right? We got one on the desk there. Yep. Is that all points are equal.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So only God can make a place the center of the globe.
Right.
Because the definition of a globe is why is the longitude and latitude of Israel any more significant than the longitude latitude of Washington D.C. or of Chile or of Africa? What makes it more? Mm-hmm. It's a globe, mm-hmm. equal points, right? Yeah. Especially a place that the Bible says is not much to look at or to think about, and yet God can make it the
God
epicenter.
Says it's beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole world. And yet we've been there, and it's maybe not as pretty as the Rocky Mountains or the Pacific Ocean.
God has a unique perspective of beauty.
He's got a unique perspective of beauty. So we're being drawn to that whether we want to or not. Exactly. And while we're looking at war, and we're looking at Hollywood, and we're looking at all these different things, the reality is all this has changed overnight. We've got a new reality on the ground. We could call it strange, but it's providential. We can say evil's at work, but ultimately God always is in control of what's going on. So there's no threat here. There's no danger. One thing that we should do is not get turned inside, outside, upside down.
Yeah.
We should have hope in the Lord Jesus Christ. We should have joy. We have the answers to what the world's going through and where their hope is. And so let's be bold with our King Jesus. Mm-hmm. That seems like a myth to many people. That's kind of the word they're using today. That's the mythology of Christianity. Mm-hmm. But man, not to us. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you final word today, Pastor Georges.
Yeah, no. I second what we're talking about. We're talking about here Jerusalem is the epicenter mm-hmm. of all that's going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, to the believer, it's a comfort. To kind of take the idea from our friend Vishal Magnawaldi.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The book that made your world. Yeah. Everyone is caught in this tractor beam.
Yeah.
Of God's design.
Yeah.
Now, to the believer, to the Bible advocate, it's a warm blanket.
Yeah.
God's providence is a warm blanket. There's much security knowing that God's in charge. Yeah. That's why I can deal with these things. Yeah. But even to the skeptic, our challenge to you would be try to define a world, try to get outside of the context of a world that is not influenced, defined, and being motivated mm-hmm. by biblical thought. And you can't. You might hate it, you might disagree with it, you might not even want to believe in it. Right. But even the fable has its clutches upon you. If the Bible is nothing more than a fable, it has its clutches upon you. Yeah. And even the highest, the Hitchens of the world, the high atheist intellects have not been able to escape its gravitational pull.
Right. That's true. And, ultimately, when we talk about these things and we talk about the players, we're not against Russians, we're not against Ukrainians, we're not against Jews, we're not against Arabs.
And we're not overtly pro-Israel in the sense of like national. We're not like
and the reality
we are in the biblical sense.
Is I'm not really against the man Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I almost feel sorry for him to some extent, because he's out there, playing baseball when everyone else is playing football. He's going to get mowed over, sort of thing. but at the same time, we don't give them excuses, and that's Americanism, that's patriotism as well. But we're glad to bring these things out to you. We're going to be watching and monitoring these things. We want to hear back from you. What do you think about the strange changes in the Middle East? What is your perspective? We appreciate you watching. Go by BibleNation.org, our website, and give us some feedback. We've got a lot of materials on there for you to look at. And, of course, our podcasts. Remember, the best culture is a Bible culture. It's proven, and it works.